It'd probably be a good idea if I took that billboard off the screen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. This is the Thursday night get-together on in Pit Lane, which you can see every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on Channel 31 Melbourne, right across Melbourne, Geelong, and all sorts of areas down the Mornington Peninsula, just everywhere. It's all over the place. Yes, we're coming to you once again. We're heading towards the Grand Prix week. That's I'm going to kill this music here because it's driving me mad. There you go. Welcome back. So we're going to talk about what happened on the weekend at Saudi Arabia and all of the controversy that ensued from there. We had Supercars down at Symmons Plains. And of course, as I said, the Formula One Grand Prix heading for Melbourne in about a week's time. This time next week, everybody will be absolutely up to their neck in it. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll of course have a preview of the Grand Prix on next Tuesday night's edition of In Pit Lane, where we will have an extended interview, some of the stuff we saw last week from our special guest David Croft. He'll be joining us with a preview of the Grand Prix itself. But once again, we've got the panel with us again. We've got Chris, we've got Doc, and we have Peter. And Pete, let's start with Formula One, and let's start with you as Doc takes another sip of the refreshments. Pete, what did you? First of all, a win to Max Verstappen, another good performance by Ferrari. What did you make out of it all?
It was good to have Max Verstappen win and another good performance by Ferrari. The thing that I took out of it was gradually as the weekend wore on, it seemed to me, to the untrained eye, that the porpoising in Lewis's car was a lot less severe by the time he got to qualifying. So I don't know if it was that, though George Russell is saying that their issues is the porpoising. So I don't know, but it seemed to me that gradually as the weekend wore on, the porpoising was less severe in Lewis's car.
I think that they'll get a handle on it eventually, and possibly by Melbourne. I think Mercedes will be a lot more competitive at Albert Park than they have been for the opening two rounds. Whether that's enough, of course, to get on the tail and get up there and to challenge both Ferrari and Red Bull. I mean, it was great to see that the opening round. I mean, as David Croft says in the interview on the weekend, the Formula One pre-season test form of Ferrari was not an illusion this time. It looks like the real deal, and now sort of the battle this year looks like it's definitely going to be between Max Verstappen, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Also, I think it's also good that the teammates in both cases, in Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, are also very, very close. I mean, Perez was on pole, and apart from if he hadn't have got that bad call on the safety car,
very unlucky.
Yeah, he was a big chance of taking that
Just
race.
Before we go off that subject, what do you think about the concept of Mercedes that's gone to the one-car team this year with just George Russell?
Yeah.
What's your take on that? I've only seen one Mercedes out there this year. I don't know. Going to a one-car team seems to be going well for him, actually. Russell's, he's usually top 5, top 6, and good on him.
A little bit risky, maybe.
Risky, yeah. Oh well, they could find another. They should pick up a rookie driver or something to help George along, or something, or maybe an experienced one or something along that. Anyway,
I don't think that situation will last very long. I think it won't be long, and Lewis will come up a bit further.
Lulu?
Yeah.
Yes, and by the way, what happened to the extended name? I mean, there was all that fuss about, I'm going to have the extended name. I'm going to have the family name, my mother's family name, and it's all going to be very. That's obviously not happened anywhere because I haven't seen it. It's certainly not in any of the official. Official releases. It's not the commentators aren't using it, Mercedes aren't using it, the FIA and Formula One aren't using it. So I don't know whether Lewis is doing it or whether it was
I've got the answer for you. I know where it is. Next week we were talking about last week on Full Course Yellow. We also spoke about on the show on earlier in the week on the preview show for the upcoming Ask Crofty next week.
Yeah.
And Crofty did have an answer. He said that in Bahrain, he said that Lewis will want to be known as Lewis Hamilton when in Grand Prix racing, but so he won't go by that name when he's racing. The same as Joe would like to be known as Joe.
Joe.
Joe. I can't remember his last name.
Whatever it is pronounced. Yeah, but Joe's easy for everyone. I think.
Right, Guan Yu Zhou. Yeah.
Zhou. I don't think he'll have a preference. He's a little bit more down to earth, and you can just call him whatever he wants, as long as you've got the best intentions. He'll excuse it, I think.
By the way, we better have the roll call of some of the people who have joined us once again. The people, David Howard is joining us again. Says good evening, Jen. Good day to you. Roy is joining us once again. Evening, Roy. Thanks a lot. I'll be in touch. By the way, Roy sent me an email which I picked up today, talking about us being on in Adelaide. If we're on in Adelaide, I know nothing about it. But if we are on in Adelaide, hello Adelaide. Mark Goldsmith is coming up here.
On the internet. We're on everywhere.
Yeah, hello Adelaide. Best of luck. Hopefully see you for some car racing at the end of the year. So as promised.
There you go. Well, Mark Goldsmith's from Adelaide, so Mark. I spoke with Mark last night, and it was he didn't know about it either. But I haven't seen anything from Channel 44, and I haven't had time to get on to anybody. But who knows? It has happened before. It's happened not just with 44 Adelaide, but when Bris 31, I went up to the Gold Coast, and people were yelling out in pit lane and saying hello, and I thought, my God, there's a lot of people from Melbourne up here, and one of them just said, "Oh, yeah, we watch you every Friday." And I went, "No, we're not on Friday." And he went, "Yeah, you are up here."
Brilliant.
I didn't know
really?
31 was still going.
No, this was ages ago. This was back in the IndyCar days. Yeah. No, they've.
Anyone else flicking along? Any more lower thirds there? Oh, here we go.
Yep, we've got HTP 510. So they can't wait for Formula One again. It'll look. I mean, I heard Andrew Westacott today on as I was driving to one of the many meetings, and it was he was saying that obviously Saturday and Sunday are completely booked out. Friday is very close. If you want to get in on Friday, you might have to be early because the numbers are really up. The only day that's you're almost guaranteed to get in is going to be the Thursday. So at the moment, because
you don't get any F1 cars. On
no Formula One on the Thursday, apart from possibly if they run the
two-seater.
Yeah, the two-seater or the speed comparison, which I'm not sure. I don't think there's a Formula One in this.
I know it's a Hyundai is one of them, and I think
Jamie Whincup's driving something.
And there's a Hyundai as well too.
I think Jamie Whincup's in the supercar, and I think there's a road car. And it might be a TCR car or something, but I don't think there's a
Hyundai something. I saw the promo for it last week.
Anyway, Box is joining us. G'day to Box is there, and good evening to you, Leegee. G'day. Great to see us all live. It's good to be live. It's good to be live. It's good to be live.
Good to see you.
Let's face it. Over the past few weeks, it's being live is a bonus because.
Good to see you, LA. Good to see you too, LA. Thank you.
There, so Box saying the only sportsman ever succeeded his name was Cassius Clay.
Gary Hocking changed it successfully by deed poll properly.
To Whiskers.
Yeah, to Whiskers. And that was actually done proper channels, and may have only been temporarily because it got changed back, but he did change it legitimately. So there's
Peter Jansen legally changed his name to NGK Jansen at one stage because they wouldn't let him carry. Yeah, they wouldn't let him carry the sponsor. Yeah, they wouldn't let him carry the sponsorship. It used to be on the sticker on the sun visor. On the front of your car, the only thing you were allowed to put on there was the name of the driver, and so Pete Jansen legally changed his name to NGK.
The captain would only do that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, yep. So that was
Captain Peter Jansen.
So that was him. G'day, Paul.
G'day, Knackers. Marshall Post Allocations. Yes, there you go.
Okay, back
So
at turn
you've got the
5.
Hotmail out the Hotmail tonight, and you've got a nice little spot there too. Good on you, Knackers.
Nice.
Very, very good
Yeah.
over there at turn 5. Went past it myself last week too. So we usually get Stilly's bicycle view, the wheels going around with it tinging his bell, try not to hit people around Albert Park. Went past it myself last week, coming back from, I think it was Geelong, whatever I was. No. I went to the State Hockey Centre in Footscray. I was there, sorry. And it's looking, without going into too much detail like Stilly does, it's looking pristine. It's going to be great. It's the atmosphere is already around the track, so can't wait. You've been looking at the long range forecast, have you, HTB?
The weather will be as clement as it usually is.
Yeah, it's a bit later this year, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
It's just
it is as much. It's much later this year. Oh, yeah, I'd forgot about that. Paul saying that. Robin Hamilton changed her name to Charlie for because of sponsorship, as well. That was like some perfume or something like that, and she changed her name in the days of Gemini racing, and so she
while we're on
changed her
Formula
name.
One, did you see Haas's bill for the 2-car team that got split into a 3-car team? Did you see the bill for that, guys?
Yes.
And how many G's?
Yeah, that was the frightening thing. I mean, in terms of that was a really big hit, and there's a lot of the drivers, amongst all the other complaints about racing in Saudi Arabia, that most of the drivers said that there's going to have to be some more major changes made to that track before they're going back there again. In particular, those curbs. Daniel Ricciardo was saying that basically he said once you get both wheels over that particular curb, the thing turns into a skateboard. And he said whether you come back on the track or go into the wall, he said is basically a matter of what angle you hit it at, and a matter of luck, because he said once you get on there, you've got no control at all. So
that's someone gave it a fair crack obviously on the weekend and walked away from it and just went to hospital for observational reasons. But it was 33G.
Whoa.
Yes, and there was another big crash at the same corner in Formula 2 as well, which was pretty big. And I mean, once again, a testimony to the strength and the modern safety of the Formula 1 cars, the open wheel cars. That there weren't any serious injuries, because they something like 33 Gs. I mean, years ago that would have been sort of a fatality or a long stay in hospital or something, but. Apparently, Schumacher was cleared to race if they'd have had a car for him. But as
he had
Haas
2 cars available, they just weren't in one piece.
Well, Haas said today that they really, the reason they didn't try and rebuild and get that car and piece together a car was because they wanted to make sure they were ready for Melbourne. They said that anything they did would have compromised their plans for Melbourne. So they thought they just wrote off that weekend for that car and said we'll work on getting sort of these things aren't cheap.
1 mil. Just a cool 1 mil, just a piece of paper and write 1 and a whole lot of zeros behind it. And there you go.
When you look at it, I mean, like if you buy a new GT3, if you buy one of the new if you buy a Lamborghini Huracan or something like that, or particularly if you could get hold of one, a GT3 Corvette or something like that, they're all over $1 million to buy. So the fact that you're building and you can repair or rebuild a Formula 1 car's essentially been written off for $1 million, I think is a bit of a bonus.
Look at an old supercar, so to speak, and that has history, and there was only a certain amount of it made. They're only appreciating value. Have a look at the example for a Lamborghini Countach, smoking the bad style. They're just absolutely going through the roof these days. So you'd be wanting more than a 1 mil check. You'd be wanting to get some loose change out of your pocket in a big bag. Speaking of big bags, though, and money, Brett usually has his lower thirds running along with some.
I do have some lower thirds. I just forgot to bring them up. There we go.
We haven't discussed this in a few minutes, but I bet you down the bottom there, and I just saw it flip up. We are going to an oasis in the desert that has lots of money floating around.
Viva Las Vegas.
Thanks. Oh, I just saw Elvis down at the 7-Eleven.
Well, he hangs out there quite regularly.
Down there with all the
good
Australia
news
party stuff.
The good news about this for Australians is they're going to run it on the Saturday night, fairly late on the Saturday night, which means it's going to pop in at about at almost perfect sort of after Sunday afternoon at about 1 or 2 o'clock on the in the daytime for us in Australia. So that'll probably be outside of the Australian Grand Prix and perhaps the Japanese Grand Prix. That'll be the most accessible Grand Prix we have all year. So that's good news for us.
And the one-arm bands will be going off like a rocker. Anyway. But yeah, exactly. That's good news. Anyway, they've tacked it onto next year's calendar, so don't get your hopes up this year. It's only on next year's calendar at this stage. So
it'd be one to go to. I mean, because it'd be a hell of a party. Although you'd imagine the cost. It's one of the few places in America that I used to have this conversation with Melissa about going. One of the places I really wanted to go to in America, simply because it's just so damn tacky, would be Las Vegas. I reckon that
So if you have that thought process, and obviously I've travelled outside Australia, but how many hours is it to fly, and can you get a direct red eye to Las Vegas?
It's not far down. It's not far. It's far down from LA. From LA. I mean, you can drive down in a few hours. I mean, that's what.
What's flight time?
Oh, about 14 hours, I think.
It's a half a day, a bit over half a day.
It's nowhere near as bad as going
half
to
a day with a couple of scotches. Yep.
Yeah, it's nowhere near. It's about it's about a 14 cognac flight. So.
Right. Yep. That's sipping or sculling. Anyway.
You've seen me. Have you ever known me to sip anything?
I will not discuss that on air. What you have sipped, but it depends if we're talking about alcohol or not. Anyway, moving right along. I just see some cars along the bottom as well, though, too. But no repairs before we do.
Pete.
The other thing that came out of Saudi Arabia was reliability, and a lot of people say that reliability shouldn't be an issue in Dampton, but I don't agree. I actually think reliability is a good thing. The reliability being called into question is a good thing in car racing, and it's one of the things I like about Melbourne is that very often it becomes a race of attrition in terms of reliability.
Well, and often for the same reason, because you've got it's Melbourne always been the first race of the year usually. I mean, the sort of unreliability that you've got now, and as sort of has been said a number of times, really they can't do a lot major until they get back to Europe and they start racing in Europe again. Then they're a long way from home, and there's only so much they can do in terms of making major improvements and doing any sort of testing. Like apparently, some of the teams have said they were really, really happy, even though they've got to pack up and get to Australia really quickly. They said they've been really happy to have that one weekend off, where they have actually been able to do some stuff even before they get to Albert Park, and they'll probably get in there. I mean, the cars usually rock into roll off the planes on a Sunday morning at Albert Park, and I'm assuming it'll be the same. It'll be the same thing there. So they'll have sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to fiddle around and do a little bit of a few improvements.
Talking about literal track record, what Pete's referring to, and I'm sure you could name the drivers off by heart and the difficulties that they encountered, Mr. Pete. They're not getting on top of it. It was probably, in fact, worse in the second race than it was in the first. And with all the spares that don't get packed and obviously the problems that they are having, you might still get your wish, Pete, down at Albert Park anyway, because they're going to be flying in, flying out, just like Brett said, and they will not. And look, just like in any motorsport or anything you do, when you not have got the full preparation when you first do something in a competitive nature, you're chasing your tail for the rest of the weekend sometimes. So, look, they could be working on a gremlin for the first, half a dozen hours, finally sorted out, and because the workforce has been concentrating on that, not necessarily their own outcome, they might not get their setup as well as planned as what they want to. So yeah, and sometimes it works in your favour, but most of the time, no, it can slap you in the face. So you might get your wish, Pete, down at Albert Park. But look, all we want is probably to get all the cars out there for as long as possible. And, it seemed a bit hit and miss. It wasn't just both cars and all the teams at Saudi. It seemed to be just one car most of the time. The other teammate was still out there functioning, going around and spinning some tyres around the lap. So hopefully all the teams. But I thought the Alonso battle was good until he hit some those sorts of difficulties. And Latifi, there's a conspiracy theorists have come out about Latifi again. What a whole lot of rubbish. God, you've got nothing else better to do, haven't you? We also lost Bottas too, so he's competitive. So it's going to be if the more cars get out there, the more fun it's going to be. And don't forget your earplugs because they will scream.
No, the problem they won't. Yeah, that's the problem. They won't scream. They don't scream anymore, and that's the. In fact, it's funny you should say that because as I said, listening to Andrew Westacott today on the radio, he was plugging sort of trying to get people in on Thursday, and he was trying to explain to the people on the radio that about this exciting new thing called S5000, which he said which will no doubt be the loudest cars of the weekend.
They will.
So they will. So. I think that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised because if they run them like they did last time, the brief time that they were on the track without the mufflers again, those things they'll sound much better than the Formula One cars.
Quick plug, only because he's a friend of the family in pit lane and it was on a couple of weeks ago. And Nathan Hearn was also announced in the last day or two. He is in an S5000. So when he was with us on the show, he was a bit unsure whether they could get something together. They must have pulled a few resources, favours, and everything they can get they possibly can. So good luck to Nathan. He'll be out there on an S5000 too for Grand Prix.
Yeah, and they'll have the full field. So they've announced Nathan. I think there's still one to be 17, confirmed.
17 still.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. So I think there's still one driver to put there. So they're probably waiting and hoping for somebody to come knocking on Gary's door with a handful of money and saying, hey, we'd like to be there, and because it's a really good deal. I mean, especially if you're, if you've a young kid with talent from some, and you've come through Formula Ford, and there's nowhere that you can go any further, and perhaps you've done a few races in, Carrera Cup or something like that. If you've got a little bit of money, I mean, it's it'd be a great experience and a great opportunity to give your sponsors a bit of a bonus to be out there in an S5000, and I think as seems to have been proven, it doesn't seem to matter whether you're coming straight from open wheelers or something like Porsche Carrera Cup or Super 2 or something like that, because Supercars, because James Golding did really well, and a couple of the other guys have jumped in, but obviously Joey Mawson and a few of those, and they're going to be running for the Alan Jones Trophy, which is a good thing. So so that'll be interesting.
Someone better answer BBB's question at the bottom there because it does have question marks behind it. You just flipped it off, but I did read it. So he asked
to answer the previous question.
You answer it first, then.
I think it will be a 3-day meeting. I think that if they try and drop it down to 2, I think there'll be a bit of argy-bargy.
Well, never having been to the Oasis in the desert myself, I've waged or a bet, pun intended, it'll be a 1 week or 2 week meeting because most people go there for a lot longer than they want to go for. They go for a lot more entertainment than just a 3-day Formula One meeting. So look, why fly a 14 cognac trip overseas and at 10, 14,000 feet to just go for 3 days? You might as well make a week of it. And if you've never been there, there's a lot to check out, especially it'd be a trip of a lifetime. So, box. The official version is probably Pete's 3 days, but why not make a week or 2 of it? You never know what you're going to do. And maybe take a drive in a pony or a bumblebee down one of the classic American highways. I think that's the go. That's the way Melissa always used to go down there. They'd fly into LAX,
because they were testing cars, so there'd be a car waiting for them that they were testing, and then they would drive down to LA or drive down to Las Vegas and drive back again or move on to somewhere else. So it's apparently it's quite a drive. She sent me I've got quite a lot of photos from her at the time, from things like she sent me photos of road runners because she knew I'd be fascinated with road runners. So she sent me a few of those. Hey, this is an interesting thought from Dave Howard. Oscar Piastri as a wild card. I could see that happening.
S5000?
No.
Possibly, yeah, possibly, but I think even in the main race, because I mean, if somebody, if we've still got COVID going crazy all over the place, it'd certainly be a great place. I mean, it'd be straight out of Hollywood if Alpine would let him do what they were going to do with McLaren and say, listen, we could pop the young Melbourne kid in there. It'd be an absolute dream.
I know we do have a few thousand cases popping up here and there every day and a recurrence, but I know the drivers could become a little complacent, especially with there's obviously going to be no restrictions or mandates that they have to follow around the area. But they could get a little bit complacent, but the risk of actually catching it here is probably because a lot less than maybe overseas in some of the places they've been to, unless one of the teammates bring it along themselves. So, good call, DH. It could be a wild card, but it depends on who it might be with. That would be.
I think the only thing for S5000 is Alpine might not be too keen on him doing that, but you never know. I mean, they might think that this is a good opportunity. The problem is he's on a hiding to nothing. If he jumps into an S5000, you would think that he's obviously a huge talent, but he suddenly gets clobbered by James Golding and Tim Macrow and all of those guys.
Oh, they wouldn't clobber him. It'd be respectful, and it'd be just a promotional stunt anyway. It'd be totally promotional if he did. I mean, it's a far-fetched idea, but it's I'm just throwing it out there for a bit of fun.
I'd like to see.
They wouldn't intentionally clobber him, but sometimes you just don't have any control over.
Well, when I say clobber him, I'm not meaning running him off, but I mean if they beat him, it's like do people sort of look at him and go, oh, gee, perhaps he's not as
Yeah, but it's a completely different card to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah.
Look, we had, and this is only just backing that up because obviously he was on the show with us. Mr. Rogers was on the show with us a couple of weeks ago and said, it's going from those sorts of cars to another one. We'll have a look at Rubens Barrichello when he come across. Formula One driver, best number 2 driver the world's ever seen, they could probably say. But he's still, within his own right, an absolute top of the pops. He come across and I wouldn't say clobbered, but he obviously struggled to jump in a car that just had all its raw power. So, I mean, it's a total promotional stunt, and that's what Rubens did when he came across as well too. And he didn't finish first; he had difficulties. So, what's the big deal?
Yeah,
it's got to put in perspective.
Anyway, that'll be interesting. Now, of course, also on the weekend, once again, because I don't have cable at the moment or anything like that, so or whatever subscriptions. So, Pete, did you have a look at Supercars on the weekend?
I saw the Saturday races and the highlights of the Sunday race. Yeah. But,
how lucky was Tim Slade?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. That could have been nasty. That was a very fortunate miss. You hate it when you see that sort of crash, and we've seen a few of them over the years where you go off a bit early and you go through a sort of barrel out the other side of
across the track.
Yeah, I think there was debate around what's fair and what's not, and I think that's taking it too far, running someone literally off the road. But I think what Shane Van Gisbergen did and Cameron Waters was fair because they didn't run each other off the road. They slid, but they didn't run each other off the road. I think when it gets to running people off the road, that's when it becomes unfair.
Just before we go too much further than that, Roy, stop stirring the pot. Have a look. Yeah, Roy, stirring the pot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's an argument that could be had at the moment because Daniel is, as sort of was said last week by David Croft, that obviously Daniel is not in any trouble at the moment. He's well and truly secure in his position, but certainly at the end of this year, McLaren, if things don't improve, and with the amount of money they'd be paying Daniel, I mean, I think and so many other good drivers. And McLaren, particularly Zach Brown's desire to get somebody with a profile, with an American profile in, like Connor Daly or somebody like that, you would sort of say, or a young Rahal, you would say that you'd have to say.
Depends if they've got to sort their issues out. I mean, if he has an unreliable car all year, if he can't get the thing to turn over, or he has some overheating. Like, I mean, Lando's had the luck of the draw with the vehicle at the moment. So, yeah, Daniel has openly said, though, if the thing moves for him when he puts the pedal down, puts the wheel pedal down at Albert Park, it'll be go, go, go. So, hopefully...
Well, that's why he's probably... I think both of them, I think both Lando and Daniel would be very, very keen to have a bit of rain. We're talking about a wet race. Someone who probably wouldn't like to see a wet race is Dave Stillwell, who has joined us once again. He's fashionably late once again. He's probably just come back off of a 45-mile bike ride and swimming around the Port Phillip Bay, and he's a very fit young man. Dave, what have you been up to? And I imagine you'll be fairly busy next week. Do you have what's your role at Albert Park? Do you have one at this stage?
Yes, for those people who are in jobs that work on month-end reporting and quarter-end reporting. Of course, today is the 31st of March, so in the automotive sector, it's a very important reporting month, both for quarter one to get an indication of where you're sitting from a business perspective. And of course, end of month, we were there making sure we punched out every repair order, every work in process, every outstanding parts invoice we could do to make sure we hit all the budget tiers to make sure we get that score, that commission and recognition of the hard work of everyone in our teams. So that was a good thing to knock off. I've actually just come from finishing off a little bit of driving standards work with one of the BMW Drivers' Cup competitors. So, of course, we had that on the weekend at the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championships up at Winton. So I wore 4 hats, I think, at Winton on the weekend. Luckily, next week at I've got to get this right, it's the Formula One Heineken Australian Grand Prix, TM. I will be one of a absolute barrage of Motorsport Australia and FIA volunteers who will be putting on the Grand Prix. I'll be part of a massive number of people in the medical team, making sure that the provision of on-track medical services for both the drivers, the teams, and the officials are all done in a safe manner.
Yes, and that, of course, is desperately important, as we saw it as you've just joined us. I mean, we what was your take on the Mick Schumacher? We've spoken about it already, but what was your take on the Mick Schumacher crash?
Look, it definitely speaks volumes about, this is one of the reasons why the cars are a lot heavier now. People say, oh, why can't we have Formula One cars like they were back in the day when they weighed, 2/5 of F-all? Well, the simple fact is, the drivers are no longer a consumable part of the race car. The FIA safety cell requirements, every time there's an injury, even in the lower levels of the sport, we see that level creep up and up and up and up. So the fact that Mick Schumacher had that accident at whatever the terminal velocity was, well north of 200 kilometers an hour into an unprotected barrier, and the fact that he effectively self-extricated from the car, speaks volumes about the integrity of the safety cell in a Formula One car. And we've seen that obviously trickle down to lower levels of the sport as well. Obviously the halo, the aero screen as it's used in IndyCar, a lot of that technology's found its way into the lower levels of the sport. And we have, the the pioneers of safety in Formula One to thank for a lot of that work. But I'd certainly say if we go back to Jeddah in 12 months, there'll probably be a safer barrier or some sort of impact attenuation barrier in that wall area. Because if someone found it once, they can find it again.
You're on mute.
I'm not on mute.
No, Brett's on
Brett,
mute.
you've muted
That's
yourself.
all right. While Brett's on mute,
See,
exactly
this is why I don't trust Stream Deck, because you press the button. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think, as we said, Formula 2 car went in there as well as. There will be a lot of work done on that track, I imagine. I mean, let's face it, they've got no shortage of money. If they want to appease the drivers as much as possible, because a lot of the drivers weren't happy. The interesting thing was, I mean, Stefano Domenicali has come out and said, there is no threat to the race. The race is, we are there for 15 years or whatever. We are 100% behind it. It'd be interesting to see, because some of the drivers, I think, led by people like Sebastian Vettel, are basically saying we're not comfortable there, and it only takes a few of the bigger sponsors to turn around and say, no, to be honest, we're not particularly comfortable there as well, but that things might change.
Well, it's obviously very difficult for Formula One to be in a position where it's, championing, racing for equality, diversity, embracing social change, social justice. It's very difficult to reconcile that with what is known both publicly and privately in governmental and sports circles about the conditions for people of diverse backgrounds and different genders and different identities in Saudi Arabia. And we saw that crystallized on the Friday in practice, of course, when a rocket attack from the Houthi rebels in Yemen was fired into a Aramco refinery, within 10, 15 kilometers of the circuit. I think this is probably not the first time there's been disruption in a city a Formula One race has been held in. I think it's the first time, at least in my memory, where there's been literally an armed conflict taking place, within a very short distance from the circuit. And I think that will definitely factor into the decision about, if Formula One returns to Jeddah, the circumstances in which they return, putting aside track safety and anything else. So,
well, at the moment, I mean, they've been fairly fortunate. I mean, the government haven't kicked up too much of a stir against any individual drivers or anything. But I know the situation because it's very similar to the situation that the WWE are in. They do two very big shows in Saudi Arabia every year, and they earn more money from those two shows than they do from everything else they do everywhere else around the world. It is a massive amount of money that's going there, and they use the same excuses. We're forwarding change. We're like now there are women wrestling. When they first went there, the women weren't allowed to wrestle. Now they can wrestle, but they've got to be dressed head to toe and all the rest of it. But we're breaking through when we're getting there. But at the same time, there's quite a few of the regular roster in the WWE who are not on that card because they're not allowed in the country because of where they were born or or their religious views or their political views. So it would be interesting at some stage if the Saudi government turned around and said to a particular team, "Oh no, you can't have that driver in because he's from a particular country," because that's I think it's Sami Zayn, the WWE wrestler, because he was born in one of the Middle Eastern countries there that they're at war at. They just said, no, he's not coming in. And then a whole bunch of other guys said, well, if he's not going in, we're not going either. So it's compromised.
Those sorts of situations and decisions that come up, like you guys are just talking, whether it be F1 or WWE. I mean, it came up in tennis again today as well, though, too. One of the well-known professional tennis players. I know you're going to detail. Because the women are saying, well, we want equal rights on pay when we're playing professional tennis on the circuit, especially Grand Slams. Well, they've come out today, and some of the well-renowned professional men's players said, well, yeah, you deserve equal pay, but you need to pay 5 sets like we do. You're not playing 3 sets. So, and it's an age-old argument, but, you got to look at both sides of the story.
I think
it often comes back, is it sport or entertainment? And one of the things we're seeing certainly in motorsport locally, in terms of a drive for diversity, if you want to affect change, you have to increase visibility. And certainly one of the things motorsport does is it puts on display in stark contrast, people from different backgrounds, different skin colors, looking up and down the pit lane. There is a big drive for diversity, both from a gender perspective and a racial and an ethnic perspective amongst a lot of the teams. But it is fundamentally a European sport that is visiting, the Middle East. There was also obviously some issues several years back during the Arab Spring about, whether the championship would be returning to Bahrain or not. So, they have to tread this delicate line between, obviously they need to get paid to turn up to put on a show, but how much of, at what point do you have to compromise on your values to turn up for that?
Well, look at what's happened. Slightly off subject, but still relevant to what we're talking about. Look what's happened in Iraq in the last week with schools. So, and we all, as predicted, women aren't allowed to go to school anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the comment that Roy's made in their virtual saying that, like the comment regarding Formula One drivers didn't race, they might have trouble leaving the country. That is what happened with the WWE a couple of years ago. They all jumped on the plane after the show to go home, and then they were told, get off the plane, you ain't going anywhere, we're having a talk. And, you had all of the big name wrestlers were stuck overnight in there because the government
held for ransom.
Yeah, literally, they were basically held there until there was sort of until there was some new deals were signed and some money changed hands. It was like, well, if you want to get these wrestlers home and performing on Raw on Monday night, we got to see. So, and that's another reason why a lot of the wrestlers this year were said that they wouldn't go, because they went, no. Well, I mean, the last time we went there, we had military come on board the plane and with big guns and say, get off. So,
very, where has it become your human rights are actually compromised?
Yeah, so that's what I think that they'd be very concerned about that. That there could be, if they did, and as I said, like the various Saudi companies, are involved heavily in the sponsorship of Formula One right around the world. It's not just in Saudi Arabia, and they went, so they would stand to lose millions and millions and millions of dollars if they did pull out from that. So I don't think they're going anywhere in a hurry, but it certainly turned on. The racing was great. I mean, let's get on to the racing was
putting aside politics, ethnic divisions, proxy conflicts in the Gulf. How good was the racing? How good was the dicing between Verstappen and Leclerc? Again, Perez. We saw and Perez, again, had his race strategy crueled by the calling of the safety car. For Nicholas Latifi again. We've had, but again, we saw,
like Alonso and Ocon battle as well too.
Yeah, I mean, Alonso and Ocon, it was nearly a replay of Barrichello and Schumacher all over again from Hungary all those many years ago. But that was former teammates. This was actual teammates.
Yeah, they didn't hold back, did they? I mean, it was very close.
It was fair and square, and I actually think they'll walk away and shake hands and still be mates over that one. I reckon it was good.
It often tends to look a bit more exciting than it actually is when you're driving on the dirty side of the track and you pick up all the dust and the sand and all the garbage on the side of the road.
When they took in a few different views of it, you could see the different angles and concept of the way it did. Obviously, the most brilliant and exciting view, as you just said, was the first one where it looks, oh no, look, someone's in trouble. They're going to, under rotate into a wall, or he's forced him off or something like that. But really, as you said, it's probably just Fernando going, lovely Sunday drive. will I go for him or not? Yeah, I might. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll have a go. Why not? Oh no, I'll do it the next lap. That's Alonso's very laid back. Remember?
Yeah.
Now we moved away onto the world of supercars briefly, and we'll just finish off there. The one thing that was interesting that a few people have just said, like, how good is Van Gisbergen? I mean, in terms of and can anybody beat him? And by the way, I'll just give you a warning because I've seen this already, and I won't break the embargo. But please remember, when you wake up tomorrow morning and you read the news from Supercars and the teams, please remember it is April the 1st. That's all I'll say.
Gotcha. Oh, so they half a dozen of them had a crack at last year, and we got a good laugh out of it. Remember? So
yeah. See, I don't have a good laugh out of that. I get really annoyed when media organisations play along with this April Fool's stuff. Because it's hard enough to convince people of the legitimacy of news at the best of times, and the problem is that some of these April Fool's stories are just so subtle and so clever. They go into the pantheon as being like, oh no, that was true. I read that on there, and it's like, no, that was April the 1st. It was an April. Oh yeah, there must be some proof in it.
That's because gullible's their middle name of a lot of people, when they just absolutely they see something on their social media feed and they think it's gospel. They think they're bigger than Trump.
My favorite.
Trump's one of them.
My favourite is still the Brad Jones Racing Speed Cafe one about Jason Bright using a prescription windscreen. I thought that was magnificent, and they played it so deadpan. It was just perfect.
Some of them are very good. I mean, one that went into sort of the first one I remember, and this is like, and people who are old enough will remember it as well. Because it got so much traction, and people at the time, I mean, you have to remember what a very, very different country Australia was in the 1960s, was the Great Spaghetti Worm controversy.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, Chris will remember it. Dan Webb on Channel...
We're going back to Aussie Ostrich times, are we?
Oh, this was
before
basically,
Aussie Ostrich.
Yes, this is before Aussie. It was they had an April 1st, an April Fool's Day on Channel 7 News, where their state political reporter, Danny Webb, went up and pointed out that the spaghetti, there was going to be a shortage of spaghetti because the entire spaghetti crop in Kalorama had been wiped out by the introduction of the spaghetti worm into the country, and they showed the spaghetti worm inside the spaghetti, and it was just there, and people were genuinely concerned about, we're going to have to get, because where can they? There's only a few places where you can grow spaghetti, apparently, and
well, I'll see if I can resurgence that one that you were just brought up a minute ago, but still that you thought, it was the funniest one. So what I might do is I'll give Bowie a yell tonight and have a chat with him, if I can get hold of him for 2 seconds. And what I'll do is I'll run the Jason Bright one by him again and see if we can get it done tomorrow. That Johnny Bow is going to run the Jason Bright's windscreen in the next Masters bloody.
No, he need to get a different one because a different prescription.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'll see. Yeah, well, John Bauer's running a new.
And also, if
Jason Bright's.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's got to be an absolute hilarious day to have a birthday.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's got his tongue in his cheek when he's saying it, so he's only taking the piss out of us as well, though, too. But yeah, we could just run it tomorrow and say, Bowie's running Jason Bright's windscreen. He's bored it off him, and he's going to run in his touring car masters gig.
I always think it's often a really hard thing for like genuine news to find its way out when, they do all the right things, they wait until it's late in the day, but it still has, the date on it, 0104, 0401, whichever way around you put it. And it's like, no, this is genuinely actually what's happening. We've picked today because everything before this was full and everything after this is full. That's our day. It's like, it's at the end of the day, as in PR, you got to pick it. It's one day out of 365 where you just go, guys, girls, everyone, let's just not put anything out on that day. Let's wait until the 2nd.
Yeah, I certainly would. I was very glad. I looked at the calendar, and I was very glad that today wasn't the day wasn't April 1st. I'm very glad. Couple of times the show has fallen on April the 1st, and it's like, and people said, "Oh, what are you going to do for April?" And I said, "Nothing," because it really just really annoys me. It's just something that I just don't find it funny anymore. But perhaps it's because I'm getting old. But whatever. That virtual Roy's saying the one about Formula V switching to Subaru engines. I mean, I'd pay money to see that.
Well, see,
a WRX engine in the back of a Formula V.
See, that's not actually that dumb a suggestion, because the Subaru Boxer engine is kind of the closest thing you can find to a modern, Volkswagen Beetle engine. 4 cylinders opposed. Spaghetti Tree inspired by BBC. Nice.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it wasn't original. I do remember that it was. Somebody said later that it wasn't an original thing. So,
but maybe that's an idea. If instead of in the US, I think they had Super V, which was like, I think, Formula V but with wings. Maybe in Australia we could have Super V, where instead of a Formula V's, you end up with Formula V's but with Subaru engines and wings. That could be the next step from Formula Ford. Or we could have the Scandinavian Junior Formula Fjord.
Oh, but there you go. Take a drink. Take a drink. There's the first one.
Just something that's come to my feet as well too. Before we get off the top end of the stuff as well too, a shout out to Pierre Gasly, who will be coming to Australia. Hope you're feeling a little bit better. He has had some extremely excruciating intestinal pains over the weekend at Saudi Arabia, etc. So hopefully he's got over those and he'll be at his 100% best, like every other driver coming to Australia during the course of next week. And Virtual R, I take that as a good omen. If you did meet your wife, because that would probably mean you are married, and I'll just a wild guess from the oblivion here. Congratulations, and you can have a joke about that for the rest of your lives. How fun
it depends on where you put the first, because you read it. It could be I first met my wife or I met my first wife.
What is it? Pronunciation and punctuation is important, folks.
Yes.
Exactly. Anyway, before we get to on the bikes for 2 seconds, just quickly, I got on my ZX Ninja during the week, briefly go over the startup, and the guys gave it they're going to be firing them up for Argentina this week. Won't go too much into it, except I'll throw a tip in for starters, a dark horse, obviously. Jack Miller's hoping to do a little bit better than he has with the problems he's had so far. And, of course, obviously, there's no precipitation. Have another scotch, should be good. But Johan Zarco has got some great form at that track, won a couple of Moto2 races back in his day and also in the lower categories. So he will be the dark horse of the weekend. Bagnaia needs to find some form. As I said, Jack as well, though, too. And the big, obviously, late-breaking news. And there's calls now. He should retire, because even Brett brought it up to me last week when we were doing the full course yellow. Marc Marquez has been ruled out for this week. But he is got a second career coming out of it. I did see on the feed as well earlier today. He's been getting his hand-eye coordination and his double vision out of the way by doing juggling. So he might be able to join a circus. A lot of them, maybe Cirque du Soleil. So, anyway, but Argentina, it'll be a good race. Hopefully we'll see some normal racing. And I think it's a battle of... there's a couple of people that have been touted to take Marquez's place. I think Brad Binder might come across and jump on.
Yeah, Stefan Brattle's going to has been announced as the replacement for the weekend. And by the way, if you I only found this out by accident as I was looking to see if the Sheffield Shield final was on the free. KO, of course, has a free tier, a number of things that are free that they put up every now and again for free. So if you're not a subscriber, you can go on and download the app. And there's there is quite a bit of free stuff. Now, it's usually stuff like Premier Cricket or local football or Sydney Football League or something like that. But for some reason this weekend, it's actually practice and qualifying for the Argentine Grand Prix, MotoGP.
Wow.
So if you don't have a subscription to KO, you can still watch all of the action. I don't know whether the race is being covered, but I certainly saw that both practice sessions and qualifying will be live and free on KO. So that's good
drop
news.
a link, Brett, on the In Pit Lane website.
So anyway, I think that just sort of takes us out for this week. Now, next week, not 100% sure whether we're going to be popping up next week, because I'm assuming that Mr. Stillwell will be very busy on Thursday night. I know Pete.
I might get a chance to join you if you're on. We can do a quick. If we are there.
Who's going to be at Albert Park for the 4 days? Pete, you are definitely there for the 4 days. So Stilly. I'm hoping to possibly get there on Friday if I can scrape together some dollars and also some time. I mean, at the moment, the time is as big a problem as anything else right now. But
I'm the same. I'm 50-50. I could go for the 4 days. I could have had a car there for the 4 days on display if I wanted to, as one of the car clubs. But we could, Brett and I could be there in a working capacity. The other thing is
that's still a possibility. Yeah,
and it's my biggest working week of the year in my everyday job. So I will be literally on vapors next Thursday night as well.
Yeah, and also I've got something that was discussed on the program. There's a couple of live streams coming up that RMITV are doing that are pretty important next week on Monday and Thursday, and I've sort of said to them, look, if they've got a problem in getting a crew together, and for people to help run that, it's pretty important that goes to air smoothly. So I might end up being there if they can't.
Just a quick sideways shove. I think I mentioned to you a few weeks ago as well too, Brett. I don't know whether I'll be going there or not, but there's also Avalon have their traditional Easter Good Friday.
Oh yes, and Nyora. This week there's a meeting at Nyora this week, this Saturday night as well. The Victorian Division 2 Hot Rods.
And
state
speaking
title.
of, we got a shout out from on the Nyora official webpage from some of the supporters that they loved having us at In Pit Lane in the past, and
we'd love to come back.
And no, they're just the supporters that actually not Nyora themselves, but the people that they're. Love us having out there, and of course, Nyora, as you know, officials love us having us there, and yeah, they love to see us back there again. So we really enjoy going out Nyora, even if it's pelting down rain and we couldn't see where we were going on the way home one night.
Yes, it was pretty chaotic. So anyway, if you are at the Grand Prix next week and you see any of us, stop and say hello. We're not going to bite you. Pete will be. Whereabouts are you based, Pete?
On the first turn.
Turn one. Oh, that's a good spot.
Yeah.
Say hello to Knackers, then he'll be there all 4 days, and same with Still.
Yeah, he'll be a bit busy bit busy as well. I think we saw earlier. I think he's down at turn 5 or something. Boxes on there you go. The Fangio stand for the 4 days. But if you're wandering around and you catch up and you see any of us, see Pete or Dave or any of us wandering around, if we do get down there,
hey you.
Yes, by all means.
If you happen to be coming to see me, something's gone very wrong.
Something's gone very wrong, yes. Well, wave as he drives past, as he's driving, taking the car out onto the, saying, I know that man. That's the famous Dave Stillwell. So
don't hang off the barriers on the side with the corrugated iron, wave to him, because he's going to report you immediately. So just for safety reasons.
Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us once again. Now, be watching, as I said, we're in party mode this week because the Grand Prix is coming back on In Pit Lane at 8 o'clock on 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. So that's coming up, and we'll have
we went to Hawaii, didn't we? I think.
Yeah, we were there, and we've got the full interview with David Croft. We also have a feature look at the Praga sports car. which is a wild-looking thing, and we'll talk about that on the program. There's also more stuff. If you've seen our interview on the YouTube channel with Stefan Rattel, we'll feature a bit of that as well. But
good interview. I caught up with that. Yes, caught up with that this morning. Really enjoyed it.
He was really good. He gave, as I said, we were the original thing planned for both David and Stefan. The original plan was to have very little time, and we ended up getting a lot more time. The full interview with David Croft will go up on Tuesday night as well, because there's no way, because it went longer than the half hour that we've got on Channel 31. So we'll put up the whole, and he talks about all sorts of things.
Crofty will be asking. You can ask him next week when he's in Melbourne.
Yeah, you can ask him if you're going along Tuesday night at the plenary at the Melbourne Convention Centre. I think there's still some tickets on sale. It's interesting. He talks about sort of the how that all started, and he also talks about what he thinks of the modifications at Albert Park. And I pointed out to him that David been around and had a look at the place and gave some feedback there. So yeah, we had a really good chat. So
if you get to go along and ask Lofty Crofty, just quickly ask him about his hospital radio back in the days.
Yeah.
Ask him about FIFA World Cup. He used to commentate back in the early 2000s as well, though, too. And many other accolades that he had the pleasure of lending his smooth dulcet tones to as well. So, yeah, he's got plenty behind the scenes that you can ask him, because he said some people get up on stage and they just go, oh, I forgot what I was going to ask you again. So, yeah, throw them at him.
Yeah, so
write it down.
Be prepared.
Write it down.
Yeah, write it down. Be prepared. The thing about any interview is research. Research. When I'm teaching people in journalism, it's research. So do your research, formulate your questions, and get out there and ask them quickly and succinctly.
Unlike what we do on
Haven't we learned anything in the last 2 years? Like, you can do your research in 5 minutes on the internet now, apparently, and then you're an expert.
Of course.
Well, yeah, you can get a doctorate
as we prove here every Thursday night here on Full Course Yellow. And as I said, keep an eye out whether we, as I said, we're not sure about next week because there are a few other things on, but we will definitely be back the week after. Incidentally, on In Pit Lane, the week after the Grand Prix, as we've already got announced, our special guest will be Porsche factory driver, Carrera Cup driver Nick McBride will be joining us as our special guest, and we'll be talking about Carrera Cup for this season. They've got their first round at Albert Park. The new cars are spectacular. They're going to be fantastic.
Looking forward to that. And just a little bit of a great segue just before you start wrapping things up, Brett. I just saw earlier as well today and talking at that class and a little bit above as well, though, too. Best of luck to Tony D'Alberto and Grant Denyer that have got a gig driving the Bathurst 12-hour coming up in May, which we're going to be all looking forward to. And on that note, no, I haven't got my
and also as we say, we reported a couple of weeks ago here. Congratulations to Ricky Capo as well. It's been officially announced now that DTM drive. So okay, everybody, we got to head off now.
Scott Morrison, if you schedule that election and that bloody weekend up there when we're having the Bathurst 12-hour. There's going to have to be some big decisions made. I'm telling you. I think
that's the least of his problems.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. We'll see you next week. We're going to wrap it up now. We'll see you. So until we see you again, either next week or the week after. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now. See you later.